Here are the 25 best arcade games you can play on Nintendo Switch right now, from classic beat-em-ups to high-score shooters and everything in between.
Streets of Rage 4 is #1 on this list, and honestly, it deserves that spot without question. Dotemu and Guard Crush Games took the iconic Sega franchise and made something that feels genuinely fresh, while keeping that raw street brawler energy that made the original so memorable. The visuals are gorgeous hand-drawn animation, the soundtrack slaps hard, and playing through the whole thing in co-op with a friend is one of the most fun you can have on Switch right now.
Coming in at #2, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge is basically the game every kid from the 90s always wanted to exist. Dotemu did it again with this one, capturing the look and feel of the classic Konami arcade cabinet while adding modern polish and up to 6-player co-op. You can play as all 4 turtles, April, Splinter, and even Casey Jones, and the whole experience from start to finish is just pure joyful arcade action.
For fighting game fans, #3 on the list is Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics, and this one is an absolute treasure chest. Capcom packed in 7 legendary titles, including Marvel Superheroes, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, and the fan favorite Marvel vs. Capcom 2, all in one package. Each game has been faithfully preserved, with online play, training modes, and a huge digital museum of concept art and historical materials that fans will spend hours digging through. #4 goes to Scott Pilgrim vs. the World: The Game Complete Edition, a title that was gone from digital storefronts for years and finally came back in a big way. Based on the beloved comic and film, it is a beat-em-up packed with charm, chiptune-infused music from Onanaguchi, and hidden mechanics deep enough to reward players who put real time into learning it. The Complete Edition includes all the DLC characters, making it the definitive way to play this cult classic. Metal Slug Anthology lands at #5, and it is one of the best value packages on the entire Nintendo Switch eShop for anyone who loves run-and-gun action. You get 7 Metal Slug games in one place, covering the full classic SNK run through Metal Slug 6, and every single one of them holds up remarkably well. The pixel work is incredible, the enemy variety keeps things chaotic and entertaining, and blasting through stages in 2-player co-op still feels as satisfying as it did in an actual arcade cabinet. At #6, Pac-Man Museum Plus brings together 13 different Pac-Man games spanning decades of the franchise, all in one surprisingly well put together package. Bandai Namco built a virtual arcade room where you unlock and display all the different cabinets, which is a genuinely cool presentation choice. Whether you want the original arcade classic, Pac-Land, Pac-Mania, or the more modern Pac-Man Championship Edition 2 Plus, this collection has more content than most people realize when they first pick it up. #7 is Capcom Arcade Stadium. And if you grew up dropping quarters in arcades during the 80s and 90s, this collection is basically a time machine. It covers 32 games from the Capcom arcade library spanning 1984 all the way to 2001, including classics like Ghosts 'n Goblins, 1942, Commando, and Bionic Commando. The rewind and save state features make even the harder titles approachable, and the overall production quality with the virtual arcade cabinet presentation is excellent. Continuing that Capcom deep dive, #8 is Capcom Arcade's Second Stadium, which picks up where the first collection left off and honestly might have an even stronger lineup. Highlights here include Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Hyper Street Fighter 2, Saturday Night Slam Masters, and the Dungeons & Dragons beat-em-up titles that have become legendary in their own right. If you care at all about arcade gaming history, these 2 Capcom Stadium collections together form one of the most impressive retro packages available on any platform. At #9, Ikaruga is a vertically scrolling shoot-'em-up that is widely considered one of the greatest games ever made in the genre, full stop. The polarity mechanic, where you flip between black and white to absorb matching colored bullets and deal extra damage to opposite colored enemies, is one of the most elegant designs in all of gaming. Switch even supports cape mode, so you can rotate your screen and play it in its original vertical arcade orientation, which is exactly how this game was meant to be experienced. #10 is Contra Operation Galuga, which is the most recent mainline entry in the legendary run-and-gun franchise, developed by WayForward and published by Konami in 2024. It nails the feel of the classic games with its two-player co-op, tight shooting mechanics, and big boss encounters, while adding a handful of modern quality-of-life touches. If you have any nostalgia for Contra 3 or hardcores from the 90s, this one feels like a genuine love letter to that era, while standing well on its own. River City Girls earned spot number 11 as one of the best modern beat-em-up games available on Switch, and a title that keeps growing with every update and piece of DLC. WayForward developed this spin-off of the classic River City Ransom franchise, starring Kyoko and Misako as the playable leads, and the game absolutely drips with personality, humor, and style. The combat is deeper than it looks on the surface. There is actual progression and upgrades to unlock, and the art direction is vibrant and completely unforgettable. At number 12, Capcom Fighting Collection 2 rounds out the Capcom trilogy on this list, with a lineup focused heavily on underappreciated gems from the company's arcade era. The package includes Power Stone, Power Stone 2, Project Justice, Capcom vs. SNK, and several others that many players never got to experience properly the first time around. Power Stone, in particular, is an absolute blast to revisit, because that arena-based three-dimensional fighting style never really got replicated anywhere, and it still feels genuinely unique today. Number 13 is Double Dragon Gaiden: Rise of the Dragons, a roguelite take on the classic arcade franchise that released in 2023 and absolutely surprised everyone who played it. Instead of following the usual linear beat-em-up formula, stages are selected in any order you choose, and the roguelite elements mean no two runs feel quite the same. The retro pixel art style is sharp and detailed, the character roster is bigger than expected, and the co-op mechanics actually interact with the run selection system in clever ways that keep sessions feeling fresh. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Cowabunga Collection lands at number 14, and this is genuinely one of the greatest preservation efforts in recent gaming history. Konami and Digital Eclipse packed 13 classic TMNT games into this one release, covering everything from the original NES title through the Hyperstone Heist and Turtles in Time, and each game comes with a full digital museum of original development documents, ads, and production art. If you want to experience the full history of TMNT in video games, this collection is essential. At number 15, Taito Milestones 3 continues Inin Games and Taito's excellent work bringing classic arcade titles to modern platforms, and this third entry in the series might be the strongest yet. The lineup includes genre-defining shoot-em-ups and action titles from the title library that influenced countless developers throughout the 80s and 90s. The presentation is clean, the emulation is accurate, and for anyone interested in arcade game history, these collections represent some of the best work being done right now in terms of software preservation. Huntdown comes in at number 16 as a side-scrolling action shooter with a neon-soaked cyberpunk aesthetic that feels like the 80s action movie you never knew you always wanted. 3 playable bounty hunters take on waves of gang members and bosses across 5 different criminal-controlled districts, and every level is packed with cover mechanics, environmental hazards, and some genuinely brilliant enemy design. The pixel art is absolutely stunning, and the game runs perfectly on Switch, whether docked or in handheld mode. Number 17 is Cruis'n Blast, the Switch port of the Raw Thrills arcade racer that originally ran in actual cabinets, and it brings that over-the-top arcade racing energy directly into your living room. The handling is loose and arcadey by design, with cars launching off ramps, giant creatures attacking the course, and routes that take you through insane environments that no realistic racing game would ever attempt. It is chaotic, colorful, intentionally absurd, and exactly the kind of game Switch was built to host. Coming in at number 18, Vampire Survivors is one of those rare games where the concept sounds almost too simple on paper, but turns into something genuinely addictive the moment you actually play it. You survive endless waves of monsters, pick up passive weapon upgrades, and watch as the screen fills with hundreds of enemies and projectiles in this roguelite auto-shooter format. The game has received substantial free updates and a major DLC expansion since launch, making the current version on Switch an incredible amount of content for a very modest asking price. At number 19, Windjammers 2 is the long-awaited sequel to the beloved Data East arcade classic, and it delivers exactly what fans of the original were hoping for, while also welcoming in newcomers with smooth, accessible gameplay. The disc-throwing, back-and-forth competitive gameplay is simple enough to pick up in minutes, but has a surprising depth of skill expression at higher levels. Online play is well implemented. The roster of new and returning characters is varied and interesting, and the overall presentation is colorful and full of energy. Number 20 is Cotton Reboot, a remake of the classic 1991 Taito shoot-'em-up that gives the game a completely new visual overhaul while preserving the original arcade game as an unlockable bonus on the same cartridge. The whimsical fantasy setting with witches, fairies, and magical projectiles sets it apart visually from most of the other shooters in this genre, and the weapon upgrade and willow system adds a layer of strategy to the scoring system. For shoot-'em-up enthusiasts looking for something a bit different, this is an easy recommendation. At number 21, Capcom Beat-'em-up Bundle is the perfect entry point for anyone wanting to explore Capcom's legendary arcade brawler history without committing to the full Stadium collections. The 7 games included Final Fight, Knights of the Round, Captain Commando, Warriors of Fate, Armored Warriors, Battle Circuit, and The King of Dragons represent the peak of the genre as it existed in arcades throughout the early 90s. Online co-op across all 7 games is included, which is genuinely a great way to experience these classics with friends. Strikers 1945 slots in at number 22 as the definitive vertical shoot-'em-up on Switch for players who want a pure score-chasing experience with classic arcade roots. Originally developed by Saikyo and set in an alternate history World War II setting, the game gives you a roster of real fighter planes, each with different power-up paths and special weapons to master. The difficulty is classic arcade style, unforgiving, but also completely fair, and the scoring system rewards aggressive play in a way that keeps skilled players coming back again and again. At number 23, R-Type Final 2 is one of the most ambitious shoot-'em-ups of the past decade, and a title that fans of the legendary horizontal shooter series waited a very long time to receive. The game features over 100 spacecraft with deeply customizable weapon loadouts, multiple branching routes through its stages, and some of the most visually inventive boss designs in the genre. It is not the easiest game to get into if you are new to R-Type, but for shoot-'em-up veterans, it is an essential experience and one of the genre's finest modern examples. Number 24 is Shovel Knight Treasure Trove, which might be the definitive indie game package for Switch owners who appreciate arcade-era design sensibilities, translated into a modern framework. Yacht Club Games built 4 complete standalone campaigns across Shovel of Hope, Plague of Shadows, Spectre of Torment, and King of Cards, plus the multiplayer-focused Showdown mode, all within the same purchase. Every single campaign is a full, high-quality game on its own, and the retro-inspired design across all of them is executed with such precision and love that it still stands as one of the greatest indie gaming achievements. Rounding out the list at number 25 is Neon White, the card-based action platformer speedrunning game from Annapurna Interactive that does something genuinely new with arcade-style design. You play as a soul in heaven clearing demon missions using a deck of weapon cards that double as movement tools, and the loop of learning a stage layout and then shaving time off your best run is intensely satisfying in a way that feels like classic arcade score chasing translated into a modern 4-bet. The story has surprisingly compelling visual novel segments, and the whole package comes together into one of the most original games on Switch.